Welcome into the Lucas podcast. Lucas Frankel alongside Mike Lucas. Mike, it is a beautiful day. Kevin Durant has rescinded his trade request. He will be a Brooklyn Net, not just for this season, but for years to come. And when this news first broke at around 11 a.m. Eastern time this morning, you tweeted that you weren't particularly sure how to feel, which is baffling to me, honestly. I have no idea why you tweeted that. Can you please explain yourself?
Yeah, so as we've gone over before, Frank, Kevin Durant was our hero, and he was our knight in shining armor. And it just brings me back to, a relationship I've been in where on paper at first, everything's perfect. They have all the attributes in a partner you want. In my case, it was a good-looking girl, came from a family with money, had a job path that wanted. Kevin Durant's an elite scorer, an MVP, a legitimate superstar to bring everyone together. And when you start going through those issues, you reach a point where you have a choice. You either decide to split up or you decide to give it a second shot. And from my past experiences, when you come back and try doing it again, a lot of times the same issue just reoccur a second time. So I feel conflicted because on the one hand, I'm ecstatic that this saga is over. The Nets are keeping Kevin Durant. Theoretically speaking, we should have a team in the Eastern Conference that can compete for the next 4 or 5 years for a championship. But on the other hand, there's no guarantee he's happy in 3 months. There's no guarantee in 2 weeks Kevin Durant's going to be happy. The dude's a prima donna and doesn't know what he wants. So I don't want to get too excited. Frankly, I'm shocked you're not the one in this situation. I'm usually the optimist. You're usually the pessimist. I'm just looking down the road and saying Kevin Durant had everything. He's been hand-chose his coach, his teammates, and he's still not happy. Why am I confident he'll be happy in a couple months, in a year or two, that this is all going to work out when it hadn't previously?
I just feel like Durant's never actually been quote unquote that mad. Like the way I sort of perceive this whole situation, however you want to describe it, is he's sitting there like, I don't know, wherever he is, in Los Angeles, in China, in Japan, in France, and wherever he goes, traveling the world, doing his business and whatnot, just being like, hey, Rich Kleiman, tell them I want to trade. Tell them. Like I just feel like he is just sort of sitting there, like telling Rich Kleiman sort of what to do, and he's just sort of the mastermind, quote unquote, behind it all. He doesn't. I don't know if he really feels this way, but either way, I am over the moon that he is back. I never truly believed that he would actually be gone, or I was really hoping that it would never come to fruition. And once you saw initially that the offers weren't very good, and that it would be a terrible, just a catastrophic move if the Nets ever traded Kevin Durant for 50 cents off the dollar, like that would be the worst thing that's ever happened. The fact that, right, at least for, this year, at least, for the foreseeable future, that will not happen. I am absolutely ecstatic. Like I was so devastated when the initial trade request came down. I had to go for a walk. I was like inconsolable for days because everything that I had hoped and dreamed of with this Nets organization was going to be gone. And usually when, there are a few instances that people have sort of look back on, Kobe Bryant, most notably. I can't think of any others at the moment that have been of stature like a player like Kevin Durant and not got what they wanted. It's pretty surprising that he didn't ultimately get what he wanted. Should have thought about the timing of the whole situation before he went through with it. But either way, he's back. I am ecstatic. The Nets aren't going to be screwed, at least for the immediate future. And all is right with the world. Everything is just back into place, and that's to compete for a championship with this team. And there's only one way to feel, and that is complete and utter jubilation.
Yeah, in the moment, yes. In the moment, it's utter jubilation.
You don't get to do that. You called Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving signing with the Nets on June 30th, 2019, as the single greatest day of your life.
And it was. But then they've tortured me for 3 years. I've been tortured by these guys, so now I'm just cautiously optimistic to get involved in a relationship again with two players that have brought me more pain than joy over the last 900 days, Frank. Listen, I am ecstatic that Kevin Durant's back. I would have been devastated and no, let me finish here. I would have been literally heartbroken if the Nets traded Kevin Durant for anything less than the grandest haul of draft picks and young player talent in the history of NBA trades. If they had, sold Kevin Durant for 75 cents on the dollar, I would have gone through, I would have texted immediately. I said, Frank, I need a week to process this. We'll podcast in a week. It'll be the greatest podcast ever recorded, but we would do it. The fact that he's back, I'm happy. I just don't want to get too happy because the last time I got super happy with Kevin Durant, he got hurt He demanded a trade. He demanded Steve Nash and Joe Tsai get fired, or Sean Marks get fired. Then he rescinded the trade. So it's been the whirlwind of emotion. So I'm just keeping my guard up this time a little more than I have in the past. And that shows maturity on my side, Frank.
Well, the whole trick, that whole like demand thing, like I don't even know what to believe there, because theoretically, when you call for someone's job like that, like choose between them or me, it never really truly ends well. Like it's usually someone's got to pay, or the player never ends up coming back. But I guess I'm a little surprised that they did end up, reaching a point of reconciliation. I don't know. Listen, the Nets, they're not sure thing by any means. Listen, they still have Kyrie Irving and Ben Simmons, two of the most unreliable players in the history of the league, together. And Ben Simmons, as has been outlined, complete and utter headache in Philadelphia. Hasn't played basketball in like a year and a half. Couldn't get along with Joel Embiid for whatever reason, and opted not to play. So just assume that he's going to be, ready to go for a whole season and, be at full strength. Like that's a really, really hard expectation to have for him. Kyrie Irving, always manages to be unhappy about something. He was unhappy being teammates with LeBron James because it wasn't his team. Of all things to be mad at, being on the same team as LeBron. Then he had the whole vaccine thing. He kicked and screamed his way out of Boston. Like never-ending list of problems with Kyrie Irving. And to truly sit there and just believe that this is all going to come together now is probably extremely unrealistic, and it's probably not going to happen. But I just know that, as the fan in me, that there's a chance, hey, maybe Ben Simmons can, go back to being the all-star player that he was. He doesn't have to, be the second option on offense on the team. He can be the fourth or fifth option on offense. He can just run around the court and be the distributor and feed Durant, feed Seth Curry, feed Joe Harris. The Nets have a ton of weapons right now. Kyrie, it could be like the most unbelievable cohesive offense in the history of like the league. And you could argue that, that a 25 or 26-year-old Ben Simmons is better than a 34-year-old James Harden. Like
theoretically speaking, we haven't seen it, but theoretically,
right? Yeah. So in theory, like this could be really, really good. It probably won't be, but there is that unknown sort of, this could work and could be really, really fun. And, I'm just going to, obviously, once training camp starts and Ben Simmons, gets hurt and sits out a week, and then all of a sudden it's, week 3 of the regular season that we still haven't seen him, then it becomes very concerning. But for right now, Ben Simmons appears to be on track to play in training camp and whatnot. Kyrie Irving is on board. Kevin Durant is on board. Everything's falling into place. Everything is great.
I saw a tweet from Ryan Russillo that cracked me up, that said Joe Harris should demand a trade right now. Just don't let the storylines die. Like, just keep it going. And they're going to get Joe Harris back. And you look at an offense on paper, with Ben Simmons, who is one of the best playmakers in basketball, flanked by Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, two of the best natural scorers to ever walk this earth, and Seth Curry and Joe Harris, two of the best sharpshooters in the league. That is an unstoppable offense on paper. Now, will it work that way because all the guys need reps and shots and they don't have a real big man and there are some flaws? Yes. But theoretically speaking, and at least looking at what this could be, the Nets should be really freaking good this year. The Eastern Conference as a whole is loaded. And you look at what Ben Simmons can do on the court, at least what we saw Ben Simmons the last time he was on the court 2 years ago. Bruce Brown looked like an all-star at times in that small ball 5 roller position with the Nets pieces around him. Ben Simmons is an infinitial upgrade over Bruce Brown at that position. Now, when he's right, and if he buys into that role, he could be. He's never done that in his career, but he could be. And that's what I think is key to this Nets team, is now they have the pieces, and there's a fly buzzing around my, you see me looking up, there's a fly about to smack it as soon as I'm done talking. But that's going to be the key here to this Nets team. They have the pieces. They have their coach. They have their GM. They have their leader. Can they all get on the same page and play the style of basketball that helps this team reach its full potential? Because it's not iso ball. This team is not an iso ball team, especially with Ben Simmons on the court. It can't be an iso ball team. And that's going to come down to, can Kyrie and KD buy into playing an offensive system that may not be exactly what they want, but it'll unlock the rest of the team. And that's what I'm excited to see now.
The way I envision this is Ben Simmons running rogue and just kicking it out to Kyrie, who swings it to Durant, who swings it to Seth Curry, who swings it to Joe Harris. And one of those guys is going to have a wide open shot, and it's going to be absolutely magical. And one of the things that people aren't really talking about is like the all the veteran moves from last season, whether it was Marcus Aldridge, Blake Griffin, Paul Millsap,
They were all terrible.
Horrific. That swung and missed on every single one of those players.
Got it.
Thank God. Now you got to fix your
continue.
lighting because the lighting adjusts to you not being in the shot.
It'll fix in a sec. It'll fix itself.
So the Nets, the roster as a whole should be a lot better this year. They brought in TJ Warren. They got Royce O'Neal. Like, just overall more depth and more legitimate contributions aside from Kyrie and KD and, you know, Seth Curry, who also had off-season surgery. So just got to stay healthy and, you know, hope for and just go out there and be optimistic every single day. And I believe that, you know, the Celtics, I believe, are due for, hopefully this whole Kevin Durant thing honestly ruins the Celtics.
Jaylen Brown has every right to be legitimately upset about this. I mean, he really does. And selfishly, I like Jaylen Brown, but I hope it sabotages the Celtics. I hope they screw their chance to sign him long term, and I hope he demands a trade in the middle of the season. And they have to be the ones that trade one of their stars for 75 cents on the dollar. And yeah.
Because let's be real, Mike. Everything fell into place for the Bucks in 2 years ago when the Nets, you know, fell apart, and, you know, basically every team the Bucks seemed to play just seemed to, you know, crumble right in front of them. Last year the Celtics, Middleton got hurt. The Nets, you know, Ben Simmons never came back. Joe Harris never came back. Seth Curry was dealing through a severe injury, and then all, as we detailed about, their horrific role players. Like, so the Nets will be vastly improved. The Bucks will have Chris Middleton back. Like this, and the Sixers should be better. So like, this isn't going to be the Celtics, I believe, are due for a regression. Everything lined up perfectly for Boston last year, and to expect that to happen again, I think is very just very a little bit maybe unrealistic.
Yeah, the East is loaded by, like, Toronto's really good, and the East goes 10 deep, man. There are legitimately 10 teams in the East that I think are solid. Like I don't think there's 10 teams that could win a title or make the Eastern Conference Finals, but there are 10 legitimate playoff teams in the East. Going down to Cleveland, who Cleveland might be the 10th best team in the Eastern Conference. And they got 3 guys who I think are legitimately really good basketball players. Maybe 4 if Colin Sexton comes back healthy. But there are 10 good teams in the East.
All right, so we have the Nets, Celtics, and Sixers are all locks to make the playoffs.
Bucks locked. Heat locked.
Bucks, Bulls, Hawks, Heat. Dude, I'm just reading the teams. Those 7, I believe, are locks. And then after that, you have the Cavs, Hornets.
Did you mention Toronto?
No.
Toronto's a lock.
A lock.
Toronto's a lock.
Stone cold lock.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, they're very good.
And then you got then you got Cleveland, Charlotte, and the Knicks is like 8, 9, 10, 11. I mean, that's pretty damn good conference.
Yeah, it's gonna be. Listen, nothing is guaranteed for the Nets.
And the Knicks can still get Donovan Mitchell too. I mean, I know. Did you see the offer the Jazz reportedly turned down?
Like, it was topping somebody else in like 5 first-round picks.
Absurd.
That the Knicks would give up. That actually the Jazz turned that down.
Both.
Well, I feel like if you're gonna trade Donovan Mitchell, then RJ Barrett's got to be a part of that deal. But I'm not gonna get worked up about that. It's not my problem.
I'm just saying it's absurd to see that now 5 first-round picks is on the table for some of these guys, because that means Durant really was worth 8 first-round picks.
Because my favorite narrative about this whole thing is, and my theory, quote unquote theory, is that Durant did this because he wanted to spend Christmas with his family. And every time Nick Friedel tweets about how the NBA, like, oh, they told you all you need to know about how they feel about the Kevin Durant situation because the Nets aren't playing on Christmas, the NBA's marquee day of the year. And then about a week later, Durant rescinds the request. The Nets are not playing on Christmas. And everything is once again right with the world. He didn't miss a single second of playing time. Durant gets his Christmas off, do what he pleases, can see his family, can spend time with his mother. Him and Kyrie can go on their little vacation together. So well executed, if you ask me. No Christmas game. Unbelievable. Well done.
It's an NFL day now anyway.
Yeah, that's terrible. Like, the fact the NFL just, I don't know why they haven't. I mean, I guess they've done this in the past, but like, Christmas has did it. Like, they own Thanksgiving, and now the NBA, they're just going to literally step on their throats and be like, this is our day. Thanks for trying. Like, they have no chance to compete on Christmas Day if the NFL keeps this up.
No, and the NFL is going to keep taking every holiday they can and keep dominating. And it's a football world we live in, Frank. We both producers. We know what sells. It's football, and then maybe basketball if there's nothing going on.
So in the grand scheme of things, Mike, all right, let's walk through the timeline here. So the Nets in the first round of the playoff. All right, well, let's start with the Ben Simmons trade, which people sort of speculated. Did you listen to the latest Bill Simmons podcast?
I have not yet. No.
Okay. Well, spoiler. One of the things Bill Simmons talked about is that maybe the trust with Durant and the organization started taking a negative turn when they traded for Ben Simmons, who didn't end up playing a single second. Durant's like, what the hell? You traded James Harden, like you told me this guy was going to play, and that's where everything sort of started deteriorating. But who knows? Either way. So you start with the Ben Simmons trade. He ends up not playing. The Nets have to push forward. They get swept by the Celtics. KD out of the blue. So, Kyrie announces that he will be opting into the Nets. Then about an hour later, Kevin Durant announces that he will be requesting a trade. And then a couple of weeks after that, he says that he gives the team an ultimatum: either you fire the coach and GM or trade me. And now we're here, and Durant has rescinded his request. He's saying, it's like, what did you just make of the last 5 months of Nets basketball?
It's been a roller coaster, man. And I think I used this expression earlier, like 20 minutes ago. I've used it last time. It's like dating the hottest girl you've ever dated, and you put up with way more BS with the person because they're just stupid hot, and you may not ever find someone that hot. So you put up with all this extra stuff because you feel like you have to, when in reality, it's probably not worth the hassle in the end. I mean, frankly, think of all the things you just mentioned. The Nets have won one playoff series in 3 years. They won one playoff series. That's it. Not a finals. They haven't made the Eastern Conference Finals. They've won one playoff series in 3 years. And you just mentioned the headaches we've gone over in the last 5 months. It's not even half a year, Frank. It's since I've been in Cleveland. We got another 2.5 years to go back, and that hasn't been a cakewalk either. So, it's a roller coaster ride, and we're going to continue to put up with it. And like I said, I'd much rather have Kevin Durant on my team than not. I'd much rather be dating the absolute 10 out of 10 smoke show than not, because guess what? Those opportunities don't come around very often. But at some point, you do realize the headache is not worth the end result. And if Durant goes back on this all of a sudden, like he's on his last limb. Like I know it's weird to say with Kevin Durant, but Kevin Durant's on his last limb. He's now committed to the Nets for 4 years, or at least until the final year of his contract, when it's a little more reasonable for him to request a trade. But for the next 3 years, I don't want to hear a damn word from Kevin Durant unless it's great game, great win. I can't wait for the next game, and let's play. Shut up, play basketball.
I was shocked last season that he was not more vocal about the Kyrie Irving situation. Like, he just sort of seemed to be sitting there and just like taking everything that was happening. Like, it's all good. I'm just playing bad. Like, it seemed like he just had. I mean, and then obviously you find out after the season that he was enraged. But during the season, he was, good little soldier, saying all the right things, doing all the right things, just playing basketball. So I guess he was just holding it all in, and he just let it all out during the offseason and just needed some time to, I guess, calm down, is I guess the best way to sort of explain it. So the Nets won 44 games last year, 7th seed in the Eastern Conference. Had to do that stupid playing game. I hate the stupid playing tournament. The Nets better not be in a playing tournament this year. It better be like a top 4 seed, or else we'll have major problems. But the win total has been readjusted. It was at 45.5 before this news. Now it's 49.5 wins for the Brooklyn Nets on Caesars Sportsbook. Mike, do the Nets win at least 50 games this season? Yes or no?
I bet the under. I just think there's too much uncertainty, and I think this team is so veteran laden that they're going to drop a couple regular season games that they don't particularly care about. And I think they probably win 47-48. I think that line's really close, but I would take the under slightly, just because we don't know if Simmons is ever, Simmons doesn't play. We don't know.
Okay. All right. Here's the next question. If you had to set the over/under for how many games this season that Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and Ben Simmons all play together, what is that number? Obviously, the famous number is 16 games for the Kyrie, Durant, and James Harden trio. They went 13-3. How many games do Ben Simmons, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving all play together this season? All right, I'll let you go first. And I'll give my number.
I'd be ecstatic if it's over 50% of the games. I'd be ecstatic if it's 41 games.
41 games. That's a very,
no,
very ambitious number.
I'm not setting the line. That's not the line. I'm saying I would be personally thrilled. I'd probably set the line at 25 and a half, 24.
I was thinking like 21, 22 and a half.
Yeah. Somewhere in the 20s. Because you just don't, they all have their own issues. Like they all have their own. I mean, hell, this could be the year Kyrie Irving says he doesn't want to wear shoes. And the NBA won't let him play barefoot. And he misses 60 games because Nike's working on a new barefoot model for it. Like, you just don't, like, there's so many variables with all three of these guys that the number has to be low. But I would take the over on that, Frank. I'd take the over. And if they could play half the
No, you take the under. Sorry, the over on that number. Yeah.
I'd take the over how many games they play together if it's at 21, 22. But I would be ecstatic, through the roof, jubilation.
And if it's 40 games, they're the top seed in the East.
Yeah. I would agree. If they play 40 games together, Frank, then they hit the over. Put it that way.
So we'll see what happens there. Last thing before we go.
Two more. We got Watson and Brady.
Well, all right. Well, all right. Last thing. Last NBA question.
Okay.
So James Harden has been taking a lot of pictures of himself working out. Do you believe that he will return to MVP form this season with the Sixers?
No.
No.
Emphatic no. No, I think James Harden, listen, he could be in great shape. I think he's old and he's got a ton of miles on his legs. And I think at some point, the reality of the situation is James Harden just isn't 28, 29 anymore. He's 33, 34? And he's been the lead horse on a really good team who played a lot of playoff games for a decade now. And I think last year, the hamstring I know is nagging him. And I know before the injury 2 years ago, he looked as good as he ever had with the Nets. But I do think that hamstring, we saw it should have healed by then. It didn't, which I think just shows his body slowly deteriorating. And I just think he's lost that one step to beat guys off the dribble, which is what made him unstoppable to guard. Do I think he could be a good player in Philadelphia? Absolutely. He's still an all-star caliber player. But the MVP, James Harden, I think even 100% healthy, he's not at the MVP level anymore.
Well, we saw glimpses of it last year. There were glimpses. And I think that, and one of the points that I keep hearing is that because last offseason, he was didn't really get time to fully prepare for the season because he was just basically rehabbing all offseason, his hamstring injury. So this offseason, he's had a full offseason to, do what he's got to do, get back to, his normal offseason routine. Obviously, we've been traveling a lot. He went to Spain, he went to Paris. He's been basically all over the globe. So we'll never really, quote unquote, truly know until we actually see it. But I'm a little afraid that he's going to put on a little revenge tour and all the haters this year because, like I said, full off season. He's back with Daryl Morey, who he loves. Is basically, his number one, that's his BFF for life is Daryl Morey. So he's got that person back in his life. So I'm just worried. Obviously, we'll see it. We'll see. But I'm a little worried that he's going to be back to being incredible James Harden. But we'll see. I hope I'm wrong. We just got to hope that he keeps his bad habits up of partying and whatnot, and everything falls into place. Moving on to the NFL, we never got to have you hit on this podcast. The NFL increased Deshaun Watson's suspension from 6 games to 11 games. He will be first eligible to play Week 13 against his former team, the Houston Texans. What was sort of the reaction in Cleveland to this news?
It's a win for
really?
Cleveland. Yeah, I mean, Cleveland fans were pretty ecstatic by this. The NFL put out that they
wait, hang on. So they went from having a 6-game suspension to 11, and they are still ecstatic.
Well, they thought when 6 came out, you would have thought they won the Super Bowl down here. Was the reaction? That's nothing. Brissett can go 4-2, 3-3. We got 11 games with Watson. We're a playoff team. Lock us, pencil us in. Then you hear Roger Goodell use the words predatory and egregious behavior, which were what Sue Robinson said. And then the reports got they wanted the full year. So the expectation was a full year. I was surprised it didn't end up being a full year. I was surprised they came to a settlement. I understand why they did. The NFL did not want to go to court and have to air out some of its dirty laundry with Robert Kraft and Daniel Snyder and some of the other owners, Jerry Jones, or the list goes on and on. So I think a settlement was inevitable, but I think he got off pretty light still, in all honesty. And I think Browns fans are looking at this as Deshaun Watson. Let me take one step back. The Browns have a 2.5-year window to win a Super Bowl with this roster. They are under contract hell after next year. So entering 2024, they are in contract hell. So with Watson, and part of the reason they paid him $1 million this year was it's because what they do, aka they knew he was going to get suspended. They wanted him to get his money. And B, it also really helped them fit in a couple extra guys this year so the contracts line up. So when Watson's making 56 or 46 million, whatever it is guaranteed, it evens out. So Browns fans are looking at it like this. If he didn't play this year, that means we have one shot with Watson next year to win it all. And then
yeah, but you could argue they could go 3-8 and then be completely out of it by the time he plays.
But here's the difference. There's hope that Jacoby Brissett can keep this team afloat. Watson comes back, is the Watson of 2 years ago, which I don't believe. Listen, that's not saying what I believe. This is the pulse of Cleveland. But there is hope that this roster is good enough around Jacoby Brissett that they can be 6-5, 5-6.
5-6 is like, if they're 5-6, they got a chance at the playoffs.
What, Frankel?
And anything less than that is a really, really steep hill to climb.
My personal opinion, they have to be like 8-3 to have a shot at the playoffs.
Then they have no chance.
I agree. I would put their chances of making the playoffs this year under 15%. Under 15%, because that all
right, here we
that's
go.
Assuming real
Buffalo,
quick.
Lock.
Hold up. This is assuming Deshaun Watson comes back as Deshaun Watson. He hasn't played in 2 years. I think anyone who expects him to come out and just be the same guy we saw in Houston in the 2020 season is ludicrous. So that's why I think they have to have a nice little cushion going into that, which I don't think Jacoby Brissett is capable of doing. Franco, you read the schedule. I'll be back in 1 sec.
All right, so there are, 8 teams now or 7 teams from each conference to make the playoffs. So you have Buffalo, lock. Baltimore, lock. Cincinnati, lock. The Colts are going to win that division. That's 4. Then you have 2 teams from the AFC West. All 4 theoretically should probably make it because they're all that good. But let's call it, I don't even know who they're going to be because the AFC West is easily the hardest division to handicap this year in the entire league because
without a doubt,
it's trying to guess which of those 4 teams is going to take a step back. Because I just believe that losing Tyreek Hill is not a catastrophic loss, but it changes the whole dynamic of that team and of how Patrick Mahomes plays. And I know there was little number 10 that you're seeing in preseason that kind of looks like Tyreek Hill, but he is so important to what Patrick Mahomes did. I don't know. I'm just really, really, really skeptical about how that team's going to look without Tyreek Hill. Do I trust Derek Carr? No, even though they got Devontae Adams. Do I trust the Chargers, who always seem to have the worst coaching in the history of the league, to just all of a sudden be great? Not really. And then you have the Broncos with Russell Wilson, who, has not really done much of late. So it's really, really wide open. But I believe 2 of those teams will at least make it. So that's 6 teams right there. And then I believe there's how many is it 6 or 7 or 8 teams to make the playoffs? 7 in each conference?
7.
Right. So there's 6 teams right there. So then you have the Dolphins, you have the Browns, and another AFC West team and like the Titans basically competing for that final playoff spot. Because I don't believe the Jets are good enough to do it. So
did you mention the Colts?
Yes. So all right. So I'll run through the list again of the teams that are locks: Buffalo, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Indianapolis, and then 2 AFC West teams, whether it's Kansas City and Denver, Kansas City and the Chargers. I believe 2 of those teams will make it. So I have no idea which 2, but 2 of them are going to make it.
Like I said, the AFC's loaded, so they're going to need Brissett. In my opinion, has to go 7-4, 8-3 in that first 11 games, and that's why I think the Browns should get Jimmy G. But that's a whole different conversation. They're going to. If you expect Watson to go 4-2 or 5-1 in those last couple of games, I think you're putting the assumption and the expectations too high for a guy who hasn't taken the NFL field in two full years. That's my main point. So the pulse of Cleveland is a win because there's hope that he can save whatever happens beforehand. The reality situation is, I think this is the worst case scenario for the Browns because there's a chance that they waste one of these years with Watson coming back for 6 games on the year of his contract where he makes $1 million, that they go 3-8 or 4-7 in those first couple of games. And it doesn't frankly matter what Watson does when he comes back.
They should go 5-1 with Deshaun Watson, assuming everyone's healthy and everything goes according to plan, because they got.
It's an easy end of the schedule.
Texans is a win. At Cincinnati will give them a loss there. Home for Baltimore. I think they'll split between Baltimore and Cincinnati in those 2 games. Then they'll beat the Saints. They'll beat Washington and they'll beat Pittsburgh. So that's sort of how those are their last 6 games of the season. I think 5-1 is a realistic number there. So
if Watson's Watson, and that's the question we just don't know. That's the question we don't know.
So we'll see. We'll see there. Last thing, Tom Brady. I'm gonna go first here. I just believe Brady. He just came back for 2 weeks off. I don't this whole offseason. I think the Bucks. If you're looking for a team to fade this year, I believe it's the Buccaneers. I know never bet against Tom Brady, but he seemed like his foot was like basically fully out the door, and then he like guilts, and then he feels whatever he feels that he should come back and play. So now he's playing again, and now he takes 2 weeks off, and you saw all the reports about about the Derek Carr story was amazing, or that Raiders story was amazing that Dana White told.
Yeah.
And then you had the story about how he was trying to get in with the Dolphins, and how that fell through. So it just feels like Brady is not fully invested in this season, and he doesn't really want to be there. This is clearly his last season, and I just believe that since he's not fully invested, you're going to see sort of the team sort of pay the price for that and not be as good. The NFC South is obviously not a great division, so they may win it by default, but I just don't believe this Buccaneers team is Super Bowl caliber.
Yeah, I think they're old as a team. Just in general, their whole roster's old. I'm not worried about Brady missing OTAs. I'm not worried about Brady missing 11 days of camp. I'm really not. If he needs to go spend time with his family, the dude's earned the right to. I kind of believe the conspiracies about him going on the Masked Singer, Frankel. I know it's wild.
No, it's not true. He said no. It's not. That wasn't it.
Well, of course he said. Of course he said no. Of course he said no. The whole show's about surprises. Like there's no way he would confirm it. I'm telling you, I kind of believe it. That when he agreed to be with Fox, that was part of the stipulation when he was retired, and they had already set the plans, and he had to do it. He couldn't get out of it, and he shot it. I mean, it wouldn't be the weirdest thing Brady's done. And the fact that Fox won't flat out come out and say, no, he's not on the show. I mean, I know it's good PR for them too, because it's going to make their episodes that much more viewed. So I understand the PR side of it, but I'm not buying the Bucs this year either, but I'm not fading them because Brady took 10 days off. Or 11 days off. Like that's not the reason I'm fading the Bucs. I just think they're old.
It just feels like Brady is like he didn't want to do this. This was not his idea to come back in the season. His plan was to retire and either.
Then why'd he come back?
I don't know. It's very weird. The whole thing is just weird. This is not what Brady had. This was not part of his plan. And I think he's not. My whole moral of the story: he is not fully invested. But I could listen. We'll probably play this back here when the Bucs win the Super Bowl, and I'll look like a complete idiot. But right now, I just feel like Brady is just not fully there. That's just how I feel. I just feel like he's dipped his hands and feet into so many different waters and ventures that it's just not going to happen. But we'll see. We see wrong stuff.
And we'll see. The NFC South is abysmal. The Panthers aren't very good. The Falcons aren't good.
Oh, I forgot to mention. As soon as the Durant news came down, I bought a jersey. Should be coming by Friday. I'm very excited.
Durant jersey?
Yes, sir.
I hope it lasts. Let's put it that way.
All right, that will do it for this edition of the Lucas and Lucas podcast. Let's win a championship and bring it back to Brooklyn.